The Last House on Oak Street. In the small quiet town of Birchwood, Halloween was a night of excitement. Children dressed in costumes giggled in the streets and collected candy door to door. But everyone knew there was one house you didn't visit. It was the last house on Oak Street. The house had been abandoned for years, or at least that's what people thought. Tall, crooked trees shrouded it in darkness, even during the day. The yard was overgrown, and no one ever saw lights in the windows. Local legend said that a family once lived there, a mother, father, and their only child, Tommy. One Halloween, Tommy disappeared while trick-or-treating. He was last seen going into that house, but he never came out. No one lived there after that. Most people stayed away, but one Halloween night, a group of teenagers dared each other to visit the house. They wanted to prove the legend was just a story. Dressed in skeleton costumes, Sarah, Jake, and Matt stood at the gate, staring at the decaying house. "It's just a house," Jake said, forcing a grin, though his voice trembled. "Let's go in, get some pictures, and we'll be legends at school." They pushed the creaky gate open, the sound echoing in the still night air. As they walked up the overgrown path, the wind seemed to whisper around them. The front door, surprisingly, wasn't locked. Sarah, the most nervous of the group, hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. But Jake, always the brave one, pushed the door open. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and old, broken furniture littered the floor. In the dim light of their flashlights, they could see strange symbols scratched into the walls. "Maybe we should leave," Sarah said, her voice shaky. Matt shrugged. "Come on, it's just a creepy old house." They made their way through the dark halls, snapping pictures and joking to calm their nerves. But then they heard it. Soft, shuffling footsteps coming from upstairs. They froze. "What was that?" Matt whispered. Jake shined his flashlight up the staircase. "Probably just an animal," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. Against better judgment, they decided to check it out. As they climbed the stairs, the footsteps grew louder, but they saw no one. The second floor was even darker, the windows covered with thick, dusty curtains. In the corner of the hallway, they spotted a small door, almost hidden behind a pile of old boxes. It was barely large enough for a child to fit through. Without thinking, Jake opened the door. Behind it was a steep, narrow staircase leading up to the attic. A faint sound drifted down from above. A soft humming, like a lullaby. Sarah shook her head. "We should go, now." But Jake, curious and too proud to back down, climbed the stairs. The others reluctantly followed. At the top, the attic was filled with old toys, dusty and broken, scattered across the floors. In the middle of the room was a small rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth. No one had touched it. Then they saw him, a small figure, standing in the corner of the room. It was a boy, his back to them, dressed in an old-fashioned trick-or-treating costume. "Tommy?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. The boy didn't turn around. He just stood there, humming softly. Jake, heart pounding, took a step closer. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, reaching out. But the moment his hand came close, the boy stopped humming. The room went deathly silent. Slowly the figure began to turn, revealing a face that was pale, gaunt, and hollow-eyed. His mouth twisted into a sick grin. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them in the attic. The boy's soft voice echoed in the room. "Trick or treat." The next morning, the police found the house empty. The teens were never seen again. All that remained were their flashlights and a few photos on their phones, showing nothing but darkness and the eerie outline of a small boy standing in the corner. The aftermath days passed after the disappearance of Sarah, Jake, and Matt, but the town of Birchwood remained eerily quiet about it. Most people whispered that the teenagers had probably run away. After all, the police had found no signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play, just their belongings scattered in the old house. The police chalked it up to reckless teens chasing urban legends. Still, for those who knew the town's history, the truth felt far darker. The parents of the missing teens were beside themselves with worry. Posters of their faces were plastered around town, but no leads ever came. No one dared to go near the house on Oak Street, not even the authorities. It had become too infamous, a place tied to decades of strange disappearances and supernatural rumors. One evening, a week after the teens had vanished, Sarah's younger brother, Danny, couldn't sleep. He had overheard his parents talking in hushed tones about the house and the curse that surrounded it. Every town had its dark secrets, and Birchwood's was Oak Street. Unable to stop himself, Danny snuck out of the house and headed toward Oak Street. He had heard the stories his whole life, but he didn't believe them, at least not until now. He needed to know what had happened to his sister. The night was thick with fog, swirling around the trees like cold fingers. Danny felt a chill creep up his spine as the old, decrepit house came into view. The air felt heavier, more oppressive, the closer he got. Standing at the rusty gate, Danny stared at the looming structure. The broken windows and sagging roof made it look like the house itself was alive, waiting for him. He swallowed hard and pushed through the gate. The sound of the creaking metal was like a scream in the stillness of the night. Determined, he made his way to the front door, but before he could knock, it creaked open on its own. A cold gust of wind rushed past him, as if the house was welcoming him inside. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped over the threshold. The air inside was damp and musty, thick with the scent of decay. His flashlight flickered as he made his way through the hallways, his footsteps echoing eerily. Everything was just as the police had described, abandoned, untouched, with strange symbols scratched into the walls. As Danny wandered through the house, he started hearing whispers, faint at first, like the wind, but slowly growing louder. It was a soft voice, a child's voice calling out, "Danny, come play." His heart raced. It was a voice he recognized, Tommy's voice, the boy from the stories. But that couldn't be possible. Tommy had vanished years ago. He followed the sound, each step heavier than the last, leading him up the staircase to the second floor, where his sister and her friends had been last seen. The hallway stretched before him, long and dark, with the same eerie door at the end. The attic. Danny froze at the sight of it. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to run as far from this cursed place as possible, but something, some invisible force, pushed him forward. He opened the small door at the end of the hallway. The narrow staircase leading to the attic looked exactly like it had in his nightmares. Slowly he climbed the stairs, feeling the air grow colder with each step. The closer he got, the louder the whispers became, until they were right in his ear. "Come play, Danny." When he reached the attic, the sight before him made his blood run cold. There, in the middle of the dusty room, sat the same rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth. And sitting in it was a figure, a boy about Danny's age, wearing an old tattered trick-or-treating costume. His back was to Danny, but there was no mistaking the soft humming that filled the room. It was Tommy. Danny's breath hitched. He stepped closer, and the boy stopped rocking. Slowly, Tommy turned to face him, revealing the same hollow-eyed, twisted grin that had haunted the town for years. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, standing in the shadows, were Sarah, Jake, and Matt. Their faces were pale, their eyes blank, as if they were no longer themselves. They stood still, like lifeless puppets, staring at Danny with eerie, empty expressions. "Join us," Tommy whispered, his voice cold and unnatural. "It's so much fun here, forever." Danny's mind screamed to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls shifting, the shadows growing. He could feel the presence of something ancient, something evil, watching him. The air became heavy with the smell of decay, and the whispers grew louder, echoing in his head. "Forever." Suddenly, the door behind him slammed shut. The light from his flashlight flickered once, twice, and then went out. In the darkness, Danny felt cold hands grab his arms, pulling him deeper into the room. He screamed, but no sound came out. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him was Tommy's wide, grinning face, whispering the same chilling words. "Trick or treat."